If you've been longing to write your own sweet romance, but every time you try to start, you feel overwhelmed, I want you to know something first. You're not failing because writing feels hard or because you don't know how to do it, and you're not behind because your story isn't finished yet. Sometimes the real problem isn't lack of talent. Sometimes it's simply that your imagination has become buried underneath so much pressure. Pressure to do everything correctly, pressure to outline perfectly, pressure to know your niche and your branding and your tropes and your publishing plan before you've even given yourself permission or the time to fully fall in love with your story. And if that's how you've been feeling, then this video is for you. I hope to inspire you and encourage you to discover or rediscover the story you were meant to write today. Hello, I'm Lorna Faith, and I write clean adventure fiction under that author name, but I also write contemporary sweet romance with my pen name Melody Archer. I enjoy helping beginning writers who want to write sweet romance stories that connect deeply with readers. In today's video, I want to share with you 5 ways to spark your imagination and discover the story you were meant to write. So here's my thoughts on this. I think many beginning writers stop themselves before they ever truly begin because they believe they need to have everything, all the details figured out right away. That certainly was me. I thought I had to know everything first before I really began to write books. And I don't believe that's true. I think you can start writing and then these details can be learned along the way. But stories rarely begin that way. Most stories begin in a more subtle way, with feeling, with longing, a tiny spark that won't quite leave you alone. Maybe it's a setting that keeps running around in your imagination, or a certain kind of hero, or a relationship dynamic that you're looking for between the hero and the heroine. Or perhaps there's a wound, a character wound that you want to explore emotionally. Or maybe there's simply this ache in your heart every time you think about writing because deep down you know there's a story inside of you somewhere. You just don't know how to find it yet. So today I want to walk you through 5 subtle ways to spark your imagination again and help you discover the story in your heart, the story you've been longing to tell. And none of these require perfection. You don't need a finished outline. You don't need software. You just need some curiosity and permission to dream again. So tip number 1, start with what emotionally pulls you in. Before you think about plot, before you think about structure, before you think about word count goals, start with emotional attraction. Ask yourself, what kind of story naturally pulls me in emotionally? Don't think about what's popular, not what you think you should write, but what makes your heart fully come alive. Maybe you love island romances because they feel peaceful and healing. Maybe you adore rugged cowboys because there's something beautiful about emotionally guarded heroes learning how to trust. Or maybe you're drawn to later in life romance because stories about second chances feel deeply hopeful to you. Pay attention to that. Pay attention to what emotionally resonates deep inside of you, because that's really important. Because usually the stories we long to write are connected to something emotionally meaningful inside of us. And beginning writers often ignore this step because they think they need to choose a marketable idea first. But emotional connection is what truly gives your writing life. Readers can feel when a story truly matters to the writer. They can feel when the emotions are genuine. So instead of forcing yourself to brainstorm good ideas, start asking, what stories do I never get tired of thinking about? What emotional themes keep drawing me back? What kind of romance feels comforting and meaningful to me? That's often where your real story will begin. Tip number 2, let yourself dream without judging the idea. And this tip is really important because many struggling writers shut down their imagination before it even has room to grow. They get one tiny idea and they immediately criticize it. They say things like, well, that's probably a silly idea. That's already been done. Nobody would read about that. It's just not unique enough. But here's the truth. Imagination needs safety before it can fully open up. So instead of judging your ideas too quickly, I want to encourage you to let yourself play around with those ideas first. Daydream. Explore possibilities. Imagine some scenes. Imagine conversations. Think about your settings. Think about emotional moments in your story. What if your heroine owns a struggling flower shop on a small island? What if your cowboy hero secretly feels responsible for holding his entire family together? What if two older characters reconnect years after heartbreak and discover they're not as lost as they thought? You don't have to organize everything yet, and you don't even need a complete plot. Sometimes story discovery begins by simply following emotional curiosity. And honestly, this part should feel a little bit magical. Not stressful and not rigid. You're allowed to explore ideas before turning them into writing work. And I think that's something that many writers forget, to allow themselves to play with the ideas. Tip number 3, build around emotional longing. One of the easiest ways to discover a powerful sweet romance story is to ask, what does the character deeply long for emotionally? Because longing creates emotional momentum. It creates vulnerability. And vulnerability is where sweet romance starts feeling very real to your readers. Maybe your heroine longs to feel chosen. Maybe your hero longs for emotional safety, but doesn't know how to trust anyone enough to receive it. Maybe both characters are carrying emotional wounds they've hidden for years. Sweet romance readers connect deeply with emotional transformation, not just attraction, not just chemistry, but healing and hope and trust and connection between your hero and your heroine. That's why emotional longing matters so much. And if you're struggling to find your story idea, try this. Create a character and then ask yourself, what hurts them emotionally? What are they afraid of? What do they secretly wish for? What would healing look like for them? Suddenly, story possibilities start to begin opening up everywhere. Because once you understand emotional longing, conflict naturally begins to form around it, and your sweet romance starts becoming emotionally meaningful instead of just surface level interaction. Tip number 4, gather inspiration from the life around you. Sometimes writers believe inspiration has to happen dramatically, like lightning, like some huge perfect idea falling out of the sky. But often inspiration arrives in more subtle ways, through ordinary moments, a conversation you overhear, a place that feels emotionally right and connected to you, that resonates with you, a memory, a song, a rainy afternoon, a lonely expression on someone's face in the grocery store. Writers notice emotional texture, and that's part of storytelling. So if your imagination feels dry right now, try slowing down enough to observe life again. Take walks. Watch people. Listen to music that feels cinematic or emotional. Save photos that inspire settings or moods. And then ask yourself, what kind of emotional world do I want this story to feel like? Maybe your story feels warm and coastal and healing. Maybe your story feels cozy and small town and hopeful. Maybe your story feels windswept and emotional and full of longing. Atmosphere can spark a story in beautiful ways, and sometimes the smallest details unlock entire scenes. Tip number 5. Stop waiting for permission to begin imperfectly. Sometimes I think this might be the biggest thing holding writers back. They believe they need to become real writers before they're allowed to start writing seriously. But you become a writer by writing imperfectly first. Every author that I know starts messy, and every story begins incomplete. And honestly, your first draft is not supposed to be perfect. Its job is simply to exist. You don't need perfect clarity before beginning. You just need a willingness to try, and a willingness to explore, and a willingness to learn, to keep showing up even when you're uncertain about your writing. And I know that can feel very vulnerable, especially if writing matters very deeply to you. Small steps matter more than you think. One character idea, one scene, one page, one moment of emotional honesty. And that's really how stories grow. If you take nothing else from this video, I hope you remember this. The story you long to write doesn't need to look like someone else's story in order to be important. Your voice matters. Your emotional perspective matters. And the way you see love and healing and hope really does matter. And sometimes the story of your heart has been waiting patiently underneath fear this whole time, not demanding perfection, just asking you to begin listening again. So maybe this week, instead of pressuring yourself to write an entire novel, maybe you just simply reconnect with your imagination. You let yourself wonder, and you explore possibilities, and you follow emotional curiosity again. Because stories often begin right there, in subtle ways, gently, and one spark at a time. I really would love to hear from you in the comments. What kind of sweet romance story have you secretly been longing to write? Maybe it's small town romance. Maybe it's cowboys. Maybe it's later in life stories. Maybe you don't fully know yet, but I'd love to hear what's been pulling at your heart lately. And if this video encouraged you, I hope this next video helps you to start writing your sweet romance story. Happy writing, and I'll see you in the next video.